My name is Helena Rojas, and as I was presented, I work partly as intercultural expert for the Intercultural Cities program of the Council of Europe, but I also work in the municipality of Botkyrka, 20 kilometers from Stockholm. And on Saturday I will tell you the case of Botkyrka. So today it's only the framework. It's not that only, it's a very important framework, and we are Jacqueline and I, presenting, it's the same framework. You talking about post-migration. In my municipality in Botkyrka, it's already post-migration, We have been welcoming people to our municipality for 50, 60 years. We have had a refugee, a lot of refugees. 2015, Sweden was one of the countries that, welcomed most of the people. And as you were saying, a welcoming attitude that they are newcomers, not refugees. It's a mindset. Everything is about the mindset, because if you think interculturally, you will act interculturally. So it's about the mindset. And the gentleman over there that you were talking about, the refugees, part, the people, we have this in my municipality about self-organization of refugees. How can we support self-organization of refugees? This is very important. I don't have time to tell you about that. I can tell more about that on Saturday. The Council of Europe started this work, the program of Intercultural Cities, 2008. So it's only 11 years old, actually. But the mindset is about, everything starts from the white paper on intercultural dialogue. That's called Living Together as Equals in Dignity. And this about dignity is very important, because I heard during the talks about solidarity, and of course solidarity is very important from both sides, but also the dignity of every person, How can you do things in a dignified way? It's very, very, very central in the Intercultural Cities approach. And we have a lot of tools within the Intercultural Cities approach, and the most important, if you haven't looked at it, I think you should, it's the ICC index. It's an index, a self-evaluation that you can do and see how you work with the index. And we have national city networks talking about the complexity of working at the local level without having the support of the national level. That's also the case in Sweden, but we organize in this Intercultural Cities network, and other cities around Europe do the same, and the world. Well, I will not talk too much about that, but the Intercultural Cities policy matrix is about, intercultural, the difference between multicultural approach and intercultural is actually human rights. Not only because there are power dimensions and other things, but I wouldn't talk about this a lot because you will get my PowerPoint, but I would like to say something about the difference between the multicultural and intercultural approach. It's not that the multicultural approach is bad, it's just not enough, And why is it not enough? It's because you don't nuance differences within groups. And there are, the multicultural approach put limits to individuals with reference to the group affiliation. You're only Turkish or Muslim or Christian, or you're not allowed to be a full person. You are, there are other people telling you who you are. With the intercultural approach, you define yourself, and we learn to not define people, letting them define themselves. That's also the bad thing, not enough with multicultural policy is a vicious circle of poverty and exclusion from the majority society, because there is a competition between migrant and minority groups regarding the resources from the majority society. So working together will not get this competition the same way. And also that the diversity advantage, this is really, really central. talking about this self-organization of refugees, for an example, the diversity advantage has not been activated. You live together with people, but you don't collaborate with them. And the thing about diversity advantage is that, there will always be more than one solution. The intercultural approach is that there will never be only one solution to a problem or a challenge. There are always more than one solution. If you include the people that are targeted to find, a way of doing things, if you include them, of course, if you really include them, you will hear more solutions than the one you have. So that's very important. The diversity advantage is that you activate, the diversity of knowledge, of local knowledge that the groups, the local society, etc. has. Of course, the multicultural approach also separates and segregates the development because we don't work together that much. And interculturality is about connections, a sense, the storytelling. I can tell about the storytelling in my city has been very, very central for over 10 years, how we tell our story. And we start with the story when my municipality didn't, from the 1700, and we tell the story, but the migrant story is part of our story. The storytelling of our city is a proud story about migration. So that's very important as well. And the thing that the Council of Europe work with, and through this Intercultural Cities network that now, it has been growing. Really, we were 21 cities at the beginning of this journey, and now today there are 135 cities and still counting. So everyone embraced this mindset, and this mindset is really effective, I can tell you. So, can public policies foster connections and an inclusive collective identity? Yes, it can. And the thing is, this is really a challenge, because we are also used to do things in a certain way. But this triangle is developed by one of the researchers for the Council of Europe, Carlos Jimenez. And it's, if you see this triangle, if you talk only about multiculturality, you are looking for diversity and equality. You don't see, the third part of the triangle is interaction. The interaction is not active in the multicultural approach. The intercultural approach has diversity, equality, and interaction. That's interculturality. And also, interculturality is managing diversity as an opportunity. Changing the mindset from people with needs. Everyone has needs. Every human has needs, of course, but every human has also resources. So, when you look at refugees and newcomers and migrants, people that are new in a place, you tend to see them as, people with needs, but you don't see that they are people with resources. So this is a so important mindset, And also this about ensuring genuine equality. It's a long journey to go. When I started to work in my municipality 13 years ago, there were actually, diversity has different phases. But when I started to work in my municipality, there were only men. I was one of the few women, but in this over 10 years, a lot have happened, and I can see when in your panel before there were lots of men in Sweden. So this is part of fostering the diversity in every level. And the thing is, it's diversity about everything. It's like to foster meaningful interaction, but inclusive education, inclusive public space, inclusive democracy, inclusive bureaucracy, inclusive culture, inclusive enterprise, inclusive discourse. That's an intercultural city. So the word inclusive is completely central. And why in my municipality today we have people at the strategic level, making the analysis of the situation that are diverse, in age, in backgrounds, in gender, and we actually do better analysis today than we did 10 years ago, because there are more people, with different perspectives, different life histories that are there analyzing, fostering meaningful interaction is about actually manage, in the intercultural approach, as in human life again. Managing conflict is part of being human, Maybe I don't think this is the same case in Greece, because you're much more than I have Spanish background, so I have more. I can see the Swedish and the Spanish. The Swedish is like the consensus. People they don't like conflict, but so we have had to work with that a lot, because conflict is actually creating development. Without conflict, there's no development. But you have to know how to manage conflict. So that's our big steps we have taken, but this is something that the Council of Europe works with a lot. So mixing interaction and managing conflict are three parts of being intercultural as well. And managing conflict is because you shouldn't be afraid of conflict, but you have to be constructive in managing the conflict, of course. I can jump over this one as this short of time. And we have developed within the Council of Europe. We have exported. My municipality has exported this method of intercultural dilemmas. How you solve this kind of dilemmas. It's always an individual responsibility, always a structural. There's always a good enough solution, and always related to a long-term goal. So we work with this to solve dilemmas. And we always work with the principles, there are human rights principles, but also the diversity advantage. And as I told you before, that dignity is the umbrella principle. So principles are equality and non-discrimination, participation and inclusion, transparency and accountability, and diversity advantage. If you have this in a mindset when you solve problems, you will get new solutions solving the problems. If you have this, in the back of your head, so when you're going to solve a problem, you will solve it differently than if you don't have this in the back of your head. So, the Council of Europe has this program. That's, I don't know how many Greek cities has joined the Council, the Intercultural Cities too, but that's good, because Botkyrka was alone from Sweden for almost 10 years, and now there's more coming since we started the Swedish network of intercultural cities. So I can really, it's really supportive, and then we can pressure up to the national level through the Intercultural Cities national network in Sweden. We can, put pressure on the national level. And how do we know that the intercultural integration works? Yes, because actually the migration policy group has made a research around this, and they have identified, they did this with several intercultural cities, and the cities that work with this index are better than the average city within safety, development of the safety of the city, administration, jobs, and city services. So when you start to work with and follow and just do this intercultural city index, you start to think differently, you start to do things differently. And there are several parts, that you have to, this is too short time to tell about all this, but if you're curious, they can always come back, or I come back, or the Council of Europe. This is so short of time. But there, I said that dignity was one part, but the one very important part of the intercultural approach is also to be aware of power. Power in the room. So when people talk, there are people that are more used to talk than others, but that doesn't mean that the ones that are quiet don't have as much to say, you know, it's to get used to have diversity in the room and handle it, you know. So always think about power dimensions. And also this balance between individual responsibility and the collective responsibility. And this is all about that we all have different, you know, strengths. We see, maybe some of us see that the individuals, they have so much to give, but there's a balance between the collective and individual, you know, responsibility. And there's also, you know, different countries also talking about what was said about some countries in Africa, like Somalia, that doesn't have an infrastructure enough. Of course, you will have more your family, or, you know, or your relatives to support you than the society. But in societies like ours, you know, it's always a balance between the individual and the collective. And this is something I'm not completely, maybe because I'm Swedish here, I'm not completely comfortable with this, and I put the citationstecken, you know, masculine, these feminine values, you could talk about that, you know, competitiveness and heroism, or cooperation and compassion. This is something that the Council of Europe wants to, like, in a way of talking about what values are putting us forward. I'm not sure that they're masculine or feminine, maybe you think, but it's a way of defining them, so yeah. And also, you know, we live in a world that when we don't know how tomorrow will be, you know, and this is a mindset not only for interculturality and handling migration and integration issues, it's because of the world where we live today, you know, it's uncertain, you know. So how are you as a person? Do you feel uneasy and prefer, like, to be led, or can you handle that you don't know exactly how tomorrow will be? You know, this is, some people want to know, you know, and some people can handle more uncertainty. How do you say uncertainty? Yeah, thank you for that, UK. And this long-term, short-term, I have talked about. We need always to do things short-term, but we have to do them in a way that is not against the long-term vision and the long-term goal. But it's okay to not do it perfectly. As long as you know where you're going, you know, you have to try. And also, should we gratify our natural instincts or try to control them? You know, again, we as humans, but we are civilized humans, you know. We have some instincts, but as civilized people, we have to always to control them, you know. So this is like a mindset that who do we want to be? And it's very much the intercultural approach is not about who people are, you know, when they arrive, but which persons do they want to be now and in the future. So we don't, like, put labels on people. We say that, who are you? Who do you want to be? This is a mindset that is very important, not to stereotype, you know, people. So, and we are, like, by now, 135 cities working together. These are part of the ones. And actually, I will tell more about the city, my city perspectives on Saturday, so I will stop here.